You are now listening to the Counterflow Podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in half, but I call the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. As always, I am your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, coming to you from Lockhart, Texas. And I'm so happy to get this guest on. I'm going to tell you about him in a minute. I should say, let's see. If you're watching this premiere live, it's Tuesday evening. Let's chat it up in the live chat. And for those of you who are like, what's he talking about? Every Tuesday evening, these drop live on YouTube. No, it's not a live interview. I've already done this interview, but they premiere live and I jump into the live chat on YouTube. So if you'd like to get notified about these, go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just search Counterflow with Buck Johnson. You'll figure it out. You guys know how to do all that stuff. Smash that subscribe button. That's what the kids say, right? Smash that button. Smash the subscribe button and you'll get notified when these drop. And every Tuesday around 7, sometimes 7:30, sometimes 8, depending on what's going on in my world. But I do that because I like to be there when they drop and participate in the discussion that's going on as it premieres. So I have a special thanks to give out for getting John Heers on this show. I was not given permission to give anyone's name out, but let's just say she is a friend of the show. And you know who you are. You know who you are. If your brother has been on this show a few times, it's you. And speaking of brothers, John, my guest today, his brother, Father Peter Heers, has been on the show. And I'm so glad to get him on. I will say when you watch John's show, you can find him on YouTube, of course, as well. But when you watch his show, you get this impression. And I also, by the way, saw him on the Royal Path with Father Turbo and Cyprian and Andrew. Just watching this guy, it's like, I think he's really a good man, and I'd like to go drink good wine and eat good food with him and talk for hours. That's my thought personally. Let's see what you guys think. Again, I've said this in the past, except for a few people, I don't usually read bios word for word because it sounds a little bit stiff, but I'm going to do that with John because his bio is impressive. And so here we go. Please forgive me for just reading off a script, but when you got a bio like John's, it's just, you got to read the script. John Heers is the former history chair at Seacrest Country Day School and co-founder of First Things Foundation. John worked overseas as a water resource manager, serving the Peace Corps for nearly 3 years. He studied history and education at Columbia University, earning a master's degree. By 1995, John was once again overseas working in the Georgian Republic, overseeing the delivery of emergency relief to widows suffering the effects of a war. My goodness. After nearly 9 years teaching in the South Bronx and Harlem in New York City, John took his family of 5, now 6, to Haiti, where he and his wife assisted and taught at a tiny Orthodox Christian church. Upon his return, he was invited to assist in the creation of a new independent high school. He now works full-time for the First Things Foundation. We're going to talk about the First Things Foundation, what they do, the difference between just giving people a bunch of money overseas and trying to demand that they act like we do, and then what John and firstthings.org do. It's a big difference. One's a little bit Puritan, one's quite Orthodox in spirit, even if they don't specifically call themselves Orthodox. There's a lot going on in this conversation. What a wonderful guy. What a cool guy. We're going to talk about a lot of things that you guys are interested in. Israel gets brought up in this conversation. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. If he's the brother of Father Peter Heers, you know, he's got to be pretty dang good himself. And shout out to Father Peter Heers if you get to see this. And let's get right into it now. My new friend of the show now, guest of Counterflow today, John Heers. I'm excited to bring you to the show. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Man, Buck, I'm good. I'm thankful to be here. It's cold where I am in South Carolina, but that's crybaby time for most people. That's a lot colder other places, but it's cold here right now.
It's cold here. That's funny. The older I get, I start asking people about the weather when I do some of these episodes. And I'm more weather conscious. My girlfriend lives up in Pennsylvania, and she talks to me every day about the weather. And so now I start thinking about it, because before that, I only cared about it here when it was too hot in Texas, which is like July through September. And I really never thought about it otherwise. But now I do. And it's snowing where she's at, which it's not here, of course, but it's like sunny and cold. I like that.
It didn't start happening to you yet where you can't handle the cold because you're getting old, or you're still a young buck? I'm getting old enough where I'm like, everything's cold all the time.
That's funny. For my girlfriend, she's 32 and she's like that. She's little. So she's always like, Buck, you're so warm, and like hugging on me. And she's like, feel my hands, they're freezing. Even when we're down in Texas.
I'm inclined. I can take the heat. You can turn it up to 110. I don't have a problem. So I think there's some of that going on too. It's just natural for some people to not handle that cold.
And you're in South Carolina. It's what is it? Does it snow where you're at?
Nah, it'll try. It'll try like once or twice in Greenville. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the restaurant you have there at some point during this episode. Before we jump into things, give my audience whatever intro you think they should know about you, anything pertinent. There's honestly, with what I know about you, we could do a whole episode on like your life or just parts of your life, but give them anything you'd like and we'll jump off from there.
Sure. Fundamentally, I grew up suburban American Episcopalian, and then had basically two different periods of life right after college. International aid, living in tough places, learning local language in West Africa, the Caucasus, Central America, and then got married and became an educator, went to Columbia University, studied history and philosophy and education, and then taught for about 18 years, a lot of that in the Bronx, in Harlem, and then went and started a school. And then toward the end of the last basically 10 years, I took all my retirement money from teaching. All of that money, Buck, all of it probably fit in my front pocket. And I put it into this nonprofit, and now run First Things as the director and kind of front man for our organization. So my life as an Episcopalian led me to go to Mali as a Peace Corps guy trying to save the world, where I learned a lot about Islam. And in learning a lot about Islam, I was looking for something that intimated ritual and tradition, and found Orthodoxy, and converted with my parents. My brother converted a little bit later, Father Peter Heers, and then my sister 7 years after that. And all of it led to, I think, what we're doing right now at First Things, which is the first thing, which is to build relationships, fundamentally love your neighbor, which I think is the mark of a Christian. They'll know you by your love. And so what we realized about aid, or what I realized about international aid, was that it was the same as public education, which was, hey, we have this canon of sorts. We have this curriculum document in any given grade that you have to download into these kids. And aid, after the Marshall Plan in the 1940s and 50s, aid was, we have this Western template for success. It's something like capitalism and individualism, and we're going to hand it to you, brown and black people, and you download it so that you can be like us. And that curriculum piece and that aid piece, I couldn't square with my orthodoxy. And it's not the way we participate in the world. We relate to human beings where they are, as they are. And we're not meant to download what we have into other people. We're meant to give what we have so that other people flourish. And so First Things was that attempt to go full bore into a world where we could get young people to metanoia and to change, but do it in a way where the aid they were offering wasn't built on some Western template of, you need to gain our successes. And so in a nutshell, and then I'll shut up, but in a nutshell, our work is finding local people who have brilliant ideas. So you can call them entrepreneurs, Buck, but in old world societies, that's they're usually groups. There's not individuals that sort of pop up and start companies. What happens is a lot of times it's co-ops or it's women groups, or you find chiefs in the hierarchy want to do something special. And what we try to do is find these people and then basically consult and create resources, not only monetary, but all types, advice, expertise, and then we help them build their ideas. So sometimes their ideas aren't like, we did a clown project in Guatemala. You're like, what? Wait a minute. Your organization delivers aid for clowns? Well, this particular family in Guatemala, if you know tradition, clowns are really part of society. Like, they're an important part of society. They show up at not just kids' events, but the clown is a type of symbol for the jester. It's how Mayan tradition understands relief of the hard work. The hard way of living is there's always this jester character. And so to be a jester in Guatemala was normal and actually really important for the community. And so we helped build this guy's clown business. And so for me, that's a success.
Sure.
Because now he's feeding his family and doing things that are what Guatemalans do.
Right.
We could have built him a school and got him a bunch of Western teachers to teach him about the Enlightenment, I guess.
Right. Right.
So that's my life. Couple languages under my belt that are fading as I get older. Bambara, Georgian, French Creole from Haiti. But I don't know. The world's a rich place. And so here we are.
Yeah. I did not know that about clowns. And it's Guatemala, you said?
Yeah. A lot of these old world traditions include the jester character.
Here they just run the government. I guess that's the difference. Is some of that Western aid the way you said it wasn't squaring up with orthodoxy, which I totally agree it's not. Is the idea that typical American, let's say I don't even know if it's philanthropic work, but like government aid towards these people, and you can be like we can be. Do you think that's a Puritan idea?
Yeah, that's great, man. I think it's a combination of the Protestant Puritan tradition of bringing a proper Christ to a barbarian people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, don't get me wrong, the Orthodox do this too. The words are way different, right? If you look at St. Herman went there, which is really important, but I want to answer your question. St. Herman went to Alaska. People don't realize this, to minister to the Russians who had no priests.
Mm-hmm.
They think he went there to like save the Alaskan natives. That really isn't the concept. What was happening, the Russian sealers and all of the traders were marrying local women, which is really the fundamental process of missionary work. I don't think people realize this in history. It's not, Protestant missionaries, fanning out across Africa and giving everybody a Bible. That's not really how people become Christian over time. Mostly it's through intercultural exchange and marriage and then kings. But anyway, I think there's a Protestant mindset in the Western world that says something like replace. And the Orthodox idea is to integrate, is to take what's already present as good and real and make it full. And so you wouldn't try to excise something from culture as much as you try to fill it fully with liturgy and priests and monks and the traditions of the church. And so for me, the second part of modern missionary work is, the first part is Puritan, like you say. The second part is scientific, and the notion of the parts are more important than the whole. And so I think Westerners, when they go and try to fix stuff, what they see is all the little broken parts, right? I don't know if you've ever gone on mission trips, but I've been on a lot of trips where Western missionaries are involved. And they go, if we could just get the plumbing fixed. See, watch what happens. This school, if we just get the plumbing fixed and we find a way to fix the walls, what will happen is they'll have a nice school. But hold on, what's going to go in the school? Well, if we can get some Western style ideas in there, and then they can learn. The second part about how to actually integrate your culture is so fundamentally difficult compared to the plumbing and the painting. It's so fundamentally hard to do. It takes so much of your effort. It takes years and years and generations and generations. But if we can fix the plumbing, get some paint on that bad boy and fix the road, we'll be good. And so what happens is the scientific mind attacks the material well-being of any given place. And if the materials can look Western, you have the beginning of a positive project. That's a lie. That's not how it works. It goes the other way. You want it to go the other way, where the love of the thing that you're bringing is inculcated in the culture and in the people, and then they build whatever the hell kind of building they want to build. And that building will be theirs because they've taken the spiritual aspects of your offering. But that takes time, a lot of time, and it takes knowing the language, and it takes being present in the life of the people. That's St. Herman, right?
Yeah.
That's way different than the way the United States and a lot of Protestant missionaries have done it over time. Way different.
Yeah, I don't think that you would label First Things Foundation as strictly orthodoxy, or orthodox, I should say, but it seems like it just is without having to say it that way. It's like what you're doing is spiritually orthodox. Does it seem that way to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the tension within the organization. And I don't know how to fix it. Because this is a great question, Buck.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. Check this out. What is missionary work in Orthodox Church? I think a lot about this. And essentially, it's an altar. If there's an altar, there's liturgy. And if there's liturgy, there's a possibility that you can enter into reality, heaven, the participation with Christ. That's missionary work. So a priest does that fundamentally, but a priest has to have a congregation. So how does one start a congregation? Well, you live among people. So we do that. The problem is we're not sending priests. I don't call it a problem. To better put it is that's not our work. Let's just, you do something, Buck, that other people don't do, and people do things you don't do. That's just not what we do. Mm-hmm. But what we do is we try to integrate in a way and learn local language and learn culture in a way that we become useful to local people. And then if that happens, there's often love. And where there's love, you have the possibility for an altar. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But we don't do the altar part. But if someone knocked on our door and said, "Hey, what are you doing over there in Kailan and southeastern Sierra Leone?" We'd say, "Come and see." And then maybe what happens is someone puts an altar. But we don't have to do that part. And so we can actually send non-Orthodox, because, newsflash, non-Orthodox people know how to love and give and sacrifice too. Like, welcome to reality. So we can do that part. The problem is when you look with your binoculars, let's say from a parish, what you want is, are they doing Orthodox stuff? And what happens is it's not an immediate identifier. Nobody's got a cross. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And they're working on a clown project. They're building wells. I don't really get it. But what I see when you turn it around and look from the underside, I see men and women that are inundated with asceticism. Because our guys who go live according to the means of the people we serve. So if there's mud huts, they live in mud huts. If there's family adobe homes, they live in family adobe homes. If our people we serve take local transport, we take local transport. If they eat local food, like we do, like in West Africa, like monkeys, we shouldn't eat a lot of those because they're kind of dangerous. Mm-hmm. But it's called bushmeat. And our guys, if they're served bushmeat by a beautiful family, they should eat the bushmeat. So why? Because that's what human relationships call for. And so that's how you build those relationships. So in the end, we're not identifiably Orthodox except for the asceticism and the love, which I might say is the whole point.
Yes.
Anyway, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm a firefighter. And so one of the questions, like a person I meet out and about will say, well, what's the craziest thing you've seen? So I hate to do that to you, but what are some of the, let's say, conditions that you've had to live in that might shock your average Westerner?
That's awesome. There's a lot of them. Yeah, okay, I'll speak from my own experience. I spent time working in a village where they had a bat festival and they ate a lot of bats. And bat eating works like this. The bats hibernate along this ridge in the Manding Mountains in southwestern Mali. And because there's so many bats that come to roost these 2 times during the year, the kids make these mallets. You know how at Christmas time we make stockings?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the kids make mallets in the fall out of wood, and then they take the mallets and just whack the bats out of the trees because they're all hibernating.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch. And they often whack them up against the cliffs. The cliffs are right there. And then they pick them up and throw them in this boiling oils that they're cooking in. Think like a witchy pot, like a big witchy pot.
Right.
And the bat goes in, I don't know, the size of a hand, and it comes out the size of your palm because it's all fried up.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just pop that whole thing in your mouth.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Wings, head, and all.
A whole thing. Because it almost, if you don't look twice, it sort of looks like a sardine, like a fried sardine.
Okay.
Because it shrinks up. And so after I realized what we were eating, what was going on, that was a little tricky. Unfortunately, I hate to tell this because people get the wrong impression, but the Mali, West Africa, Georgia, Guatemala, Sierra Leone, these places are not violent.
Mm-hmm.
Contrary to what you hear. There's gangs, like there's gangs in LA, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But if you mind your business and you know your way around, they're mostly agrarian societies. But I've seen some violence that ends in weird ways. Like in Haiti, the way that people would get killed and they would put them on the road. So there was this road I used to walk and to go get construction materials, and was on the way to City Soleil. And I would walk because I was living that life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a car. And so that was really weird for a white guy to be walking down that road, first of all.
Okay.
But down that road, the gangs and also the police would place people that had been killed the night before. They would just sort of prop them up along the road because it was a warning. It was a type of don't go here. But the thing is they would not come and get them. And so over the course of this couple months, we were working on this project, I would go down there at different times and I would see the same guy deteriorating. Oof. And I couldn't handle that. It was very disturbing for me. And so at one point I went into City Soleil to a police station and I just walked in there because I don't know, I couldn't take it. And in Cajun Creole, I told the guy, there's people out here and we need to do something. I'm willing to pay to properly bury these men. Can we please? I'm cursing at the guy. I don't know why I'm cursing at this policeman. Well, he's sitting and smoking a cigarette with his feet up. I'm not exaggerating. You know, like one of the cowboy movies.
Yeah, sure.
And he's like, how much?
Oh.
And I said, how much you need? He asked for a sizable amount and I gave it to him. Those dudes never got buried.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. That's a wacky thing I saw.
Yeah. Yeah. How about living conditions that you've had? You say you have to live and adapt to the local culture, let's say. Mm-hmm. I assume you've had to sleep in some places that aren't the most fun.
I'll tell a story about my buddy, Daniel.
Okay. He
was traveling through Guinea in order to get a flight to Europe. And this is a good story. He and his buddy Austin, they're both field workers from First Things. They took a bus from Freetown to capital of Guinea. Why am I forgetting it right now? Conakry. And so I don't know if any of your listeners have been to that part of West Africa. That's a forgotten part of West Africa. Okay, not many people go there, especially not many Westerners, but they took this local bus, and on the way they made friends, because that's what we do. And they got to Conakry. Now, this is a big city for West Africa with a ton of ghettos, like rough places. And of course, the guys on the bus had invited them, because they spoke the local, Daniel speaks Creole real nicely, to go with them to their house, right? Because that's life.
Mm-hmm.
Because these guys don't care about where they live. What they care about is the friendship that they've made on some level. And Daniel says, and Austin doesn't want to go, but Daniel says, yeah, let's go. We can stay at their house rather than buy a hotel. We can. So you see, down. But this place, they got there about 2 a.m, as it's told to me by Daniel. He walks in, the beautiful guy who says, come to my house, we'll eat. They ate together, but then Daniel, they walk him to his bedroom and open a door. It's like a dusty door inside of this very like kind of rundown mud hut with a tin roof. And in there are guys sleeping. There's 2 beds, or 1 bed and 2 guys sleeping on it. And the host kicks the 2 guys out and puts Daniel on one of the beds and then puts Austin on a mat. And the 2 dudes who are sleeping there just curl up at the foot of the bed and just keep sleeping. And Daniel sleeps in his bed as those guys sleep on the floor. That kind of story, man.
Yeah.
I love that. And that place, that was the kind of place you hear about on the news. It was one of these West African, you call it a ghetto, you can call it a shanty town, that kind of place. But Daniel's language and Austin's language was protecting them. See, I don't think people understand what local language, how it protects you.
Okay.
It's amazing when you learn the local language, not the colonial language. When you learn the local language and you speak it in a way that demonstrates, there's only one way you could have learned my language. You've been here. You did not learn this on a phone call. Like, you couldn't have learned this online.
Right.
Malinke, Bambara, Mayan, J. Like, there's no way you learn that stuff. And so right away, you become super different. How do you know this? Why do you know this? And then when you realize you know it because you're of the place, they take care of you. Like in a second.
Yeah.
It's wild.
That makes sense. You lived in, I'm really curious about Georgia, not the state north of Florida, but the country. I've had people I know that have been there and have said wonderful things about it. I have heard that it's there's Orthodox churches everywhere. What did you think about Georgia, and what was your experience like there? And I want to know about the culture and the people.
Sure. I would say this country probably changed my life more than any other place I've been, including my growing up in America. I mean, I'm an American and I'm proud of that, but this place. So fundamentally, it's Christian since the 300s, the early 300s. Saint Nino walked there from Jerusalem. The people she walked there with were all killed. It was a bunch of maidens who did not. Essentially, they were fleeing sort of a tyrannical setup where they were marrying people they didn't want to marry. And Nino said she wanted to do the work of God, so she went to Georgia. And her friends were all killed. And on the way there, she got there and met King Menas. I'm forgetting his name, Menas, I want to call him. And anyway, he did a miracle for his wife, yada, yada. And Georgia becomes Orthodox. So why I love this country is that story is, guys, 600 years before Russia was Orthodox, 600 years before they even knew the first bit about it. So you have a very old Orthodox Christian country, and they're isolated. And where they're not isolated, in other words, where people come to Georgia, they're coming to conquer because of its place in the Silk Road and its resources. And so where they're fighting for that honor, for that culture, for Nino and Orthodoxy. And so when you fight for something, of course, you adhere to it. And so the isolation and the adherence to orthodoxy allows them to do this incredible thing, which is to be like a little time capsule of orthodoxy. And so when you go there, what you'll see is it's not West. You clearly realize it's not the West, which is not bad or good. It's just not.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not Asia either. It doesn't feel like Singapore or something. And then you look geographically and it's right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually is the crossroads of the world, but it maintains its orthodoxy, which means that the language, Georgian, is fundamentally informed by Orthodox Christianity, and Orthodox Christianity informs the language. It goes both ways. And so it's a unique opportunity to experience a culture that has maintained the spirit. And for me, it was the spirit of hospitality. You got to go, Buck, because what happens, this is why I was trying to say, how do I know a Christian? Okay, how do I know? How do I know? How do I know? Baptism. My brother, he likes to draw these lines, and they make sense to me theologically, canonically. I'm in agreement.
Mm-hmm.
But is that it? Is that really it? It almost feels like it's too Gnostic. It's too out there. It's an ideal. It's an intellectual ideal about yes or no. But how do I know a Christian? Because you were baptized, but also because something happens to you when I'm near you and you give yourself to me. You are hospitable, and the hospital you create heals me. And these cats in Georgia, I never seen anything like it. My Muslim friends in West Africa are good at it, man. A lot of the old world countries, whether they're Christian or not, they understand hospitality, man. I know a lot of your listeners will know if they've been to Arab countries, man. Muslims take care of you. That's really not a question. But I'd never seen anything like in Georgia. I could go places and people would just open their place, man. And then they had these dinners, the super dinner that our restaurant's based on, the KP dinners. And basically, it's so orthodox in the way people relate to you, but then there's the architecture, right? There's the churches that are over thousands I was in a church from the 500s.
Wow.
500s.
Yeah.
And, they've been shot up. The Soviets shot them up, or the Persians whitewashed them. There's a lot of things that happen to them, but they're there. And when they burn incense in there, you feel the presence of the saints. So I got changed by that place. I was there during their civil war. And I basically got the courage to go back and get married because I watched tough people try to make sense of a world without electricity, without running water, a lot of dead men who had gone off to fight and were leaving widows. And I was like, how can I be afraid to marry somebody? Like, I was kind of that punk kid that was like, I'm not ready for marriage. I didn't find a woman that makes me happy, like all that garbage. And they kind of emboldened me to be like, really, dude? Like, this, you can't man up and give yourself and do it right. Like, that it's pretty weak. So they made me feel less manly, which made me want to be more manly. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. It's almost like that Orthodox, so often within Orthodoxy, there's this paradox that happens. And that sounds like it's like, you're making me feel less manly. I got to be more manly.
Right. Right.
What's up, guys? Your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson here. And you might notice this recording sounds different than the usual podcast, and that is because I'm sitting outside here in Lockhart, Texas, recording this ad into my iPhone. It probably sounds pretty crappy. Well, I'm doing this to show you something very cool. Many of you guys know that my production team works over at Podsworth Media, and they've been producing my show for quite a while. I get a lot of questions and people asking, who does your podcast? Why does it sound great? And I'm telling you why. It's because the guys at Podsworth are amazing. They've got this brand new online app for taking rough recordings like this and making them a whole lot cleaner and more listenable with just a few easy clicks. It will remove background noise. It reduces plosives. It fixes clipping, which is distortion from recording with the gain up too high. Clipping, which is distortion from recording with the gain up too high, which I can promise you I've done many times, and they fixed this for me. It removes clicks and pops It removes clicks and pops, and then also levels out the dialogue. So there's no crazy where the guest sounds too loud or the interviewer sounds too quiet. Here's what you guys can do. All of y'all that are interested in recording podcasts or audiobooks or anything, if you're a pastor and you want your sermon recorded, whatever the case may be, go to podsworth.com and click Get Started. You drag and drop your audio files or click to open your file manager. This also works on your smartphone's web browser. You customize your settings that you want, but the default works fine on most podcast recordings. Then enter code BUCK50, BUCK 50 for 50% off of your first order. You don't need an account, just an email address and payment. And you'll get a download link in your email for your cleaned up files. How cool is this? The guys at Podsworth run everything they do through this app before they do anything else to it. So all of my recordings go through this app that we're talking about. It works great. Like I said, any spoken word recordings, obviously for podcasts, YouTube videos, sermons, audiobooks, whatever, it will make awful recordings sound listenable and much more professional. So, like I said, go to podsworth.com and click Get Started. You can use promo code BUCK50, BUCK 50 for 50% off of your first order. You can use promo code BUCK50, BUCK 50 for 50% off of your first order. Let's get it. When you live in places like Georgia, how does it alter the way you view the West?
It made me suspicious of the Enlightenment. My podcast is mostly about that.
Yeah. And to interrupt real quick right there,
sure.
I wrote this phrase down that I heard you say when you spoke at Montanica, and it was Roman Protestant individualistic scientific legacy. Yeah. And so let's work that into what we're talking about. I think that can fit into where we're going here.
Sure. Georgia and also West Africa, they helped me realize that the things I thought were human, like these are human. This is a human thing to want to rationally answer all the questions. It's a human thing to doubt and to be skeptical. You know, like, because we came up, you and me both in America. It's a human thing to rationally consider your retirement plan and prepare in a way that makes rational sense for your future. I thought that's just what people did. And then you realize, no, that's a training. You've received that training. I'm like, ooh, my mom, yeah, and your dad, and the guy at the store, and your coach, because that's who we are. We're an enlightened people. And I don't mean that like better. Some people will hear that and be like,
yeah.
No, I actually kind of mean it the other way around, which is we've been dipped in how to think in a rational way to save ourselves. And that's not the way a lot of the world works. First of all, most of the world doesn't think you can save yourself, which is a really important concept. Like, how do you live life? Well, you have to be well educated so that you can save yourself from all the dumb things that people do. Yeah, good luck with that, man. Like, life's got too many variables. And you might be able to make a plan that makes life better on some level, but not really. Most of the time, you already had the things you needed to be good. You didn't really acquire that much more as an individual planning to become a better person. I don't really believe that. And what happened is I did believe that. I did believe I could create my life in a way that if I used reason, it would be a better life for me and for everybody around me. But the old world, Georgia in particular, when people say I trust in God, Buck, like that's a thing. Like, wait a minute. Shouldn't you be out working on your fields right now? They're like, no, the fields are done. You're like, I know, but you could take this time and do another field. And then you'll literally hear, God knows. And they actually mean God knows. What we mean is why are you being lazy, bro? Go and fix your life so you can get more stuff that you want. What they actually mean is I've done what I've done. I'm cooperating with God. I have enough. And I start to realize like, oh, they're not lazy. They have a different perspective on what fulfillment is. And they don't think they can save themselves. So it might mean that I'll spend a little more time sitting around the hearth with my kids but then you won't get that second field that allows you to buy that new cart that allows you to, and you're like, okay. And you realize people actually live like that. And the Enlightenment was an attempt to rationalize out and to smooth out all the complexities of life that caused individual suffering. And I'm not against that. The problem is we just created new types of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about an anxious people, like Westerners are very anxious.
Mm-hmm.
We got cars and good roofs, but we don't have peace. So that's okay. It's never going to be utopian. I'm not saying that one's better than the other, but we got to watch out. What we adopt could be in the end worse than what we could be. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. I mean, I think some people might say it is worse if you're talking spiritually speaking.
Right. Well, here's the thing. That's the other thing that I think happened, if you're asking. There's a spirit world, man. Like it's not weird to imagine that the sunset is more than the sunset. That's an okay thing and I know as a lot of Orthodox listen to this, but there's a lot of non-Orthodox listen to this too. It's okay to imagine that you're seeing not only the sunrise, but the Son of God. You're seeing light, warmth, and you're seeing hope. It's all happening when you see the sunrise. And it's okay to know those things as real and not sentimentally made up so that you can feel it's real, man. And I realized from these old world countries, they believe like that.
Mm-hmm.
In West Africa, if you tell people that, oh my gosh, I think the demons are causing, if you say like what many Orthodox say, I have to watch out, the demons are toying with me.
Yes.
If you say that in American public square, it's a little weird.
Right.
Everybody in West Africa would be like, oh, which demons?
Right. Right.
And now all of a sudden you're having a spiritual, quote, conversation, but they believe what you're saying about the potentiality of possession. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Which changes your ability, which makes it easier to understand the spiritual world because actually everyone around you is participating in a conversation about it as well. Now, I don't know. We can go on about that, but it can get crazy though, right?
Mm-hmm. This is my take, my very small experience in life and orthodoxy and then in atheism prior to that. There is a materialist rationale within America. You might even, I don't know if I don't want to unfairly say within Protestantism, but I'm not painting that with this. Just America in general, which is largely a Protestant country. There's a materialism that I think leads to, well, it did for me, it leads to atheism because of the lack of spiritual depth. Does that make sense to you as well?
100%. It's not so much that you and I can't go there growing up in the West. It's not so much that we can't participate in the spiritual world.
Mm-hmm.
It's not offered to us. It's not a conversation that's offered in any real sense when you're coming up. You know what I mean? And so the material world becomes the only world we have, not because it's true, because the people around you operate as if it's true. And so what happens is you start to believe the thing that, in other words, you start to use the tools that everyone else is using. And this, what I try to always say in my podcast is, and I want to ask you a question about this, but what I try to say in the podcast is there's nobody listening on this pod or any other pod or anywhere in the United States that grew up in the United States that isn't a materialist. It's
Right.
too late.
Right.
A lot of us Orthodox converts are like, escape that one. Like,
No.
no, bro, it's not even
Right.
close.
Right.
You don't understand until you actually watch a people who are not materialists. Then you go
Yes.
like, well, they're crazy. They're piercing they're piercing their genitals. And you're like, they're just crazy. I'm like, well, actually, let's stop for a minute. Let's try to figure it out, because what's happening there is they're actually, the outcome of their spiritual world is being manifest in that activity. And just like yours is, except for you don't think you have a spiritual life. You think it's pure materialism, which is not true. And so I love this conversation. So here's what I wonder, as you were coming up, did you recognize, because I heard your story, you were trying to figure stuff out, you were a type of rebel. Did you just intuit that there was another layer, a deeper level, a spiritual level that wasn't material? Were you always aiming for it, or how did that work for you?
I didn't think of it in those terms. Now looking back, I think everyone is looking for that. It's just that what depends what you think that is. Right. And so certainly for me, I wasn't thinking of it in a spiritual term. I was thinking of it as, let's say when I was a libertarian, I was thinking of it as ultimate human freedom or individual freedom / responsibility, two sides of the same coin. And so I was thinking of it in those terms. I think once 2020 happened, as I expanded some of the conversations I was having on this podcast with people like Cyprian and my friend Matt Erickson, who does the King Pill podcast. And as I started talking to people that were spiritual and looking at some of the things that I was going, what on earth is happening in the world? Not just a state or a country, it was the world. Then I started thinking something is spiritual that's happening that I was unaware of prior to opening my mind to this concept.
So you didn't, the vocabulary wasn't present to you, right? You
Correct.
Couldn't use it.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say is in our culture, it buries or bans certain vocabulary without us knowing it. And that's what these experiences overseas help me. And I'll say one thing about that. Not just experiences overseas. This is really important. This is why First Things is what it is. There is an experience overseas, and then there's an experience of poverty at length overseas. That's not the same thing. When you go to visit a place, it's way different. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go and visit. You should. Tourism seems cool to me. A lot of people in the old world, they benefit from our tourism. I had no problems with that. But there's something about ascetic living in a world not your own. Yeah. Just I think this is what a monastery is on some level.
It humbles you, I would imagine, for certain.
Bling.
Yeah.
When you're pulling water with these little girls that nobody ever sees in society, just these, little 7-year-old girls now you're talking to them. And all of this, you would never do that on that trip, Right. And now all of a sudden you're realizing, you have to force to think about who you are, and the vocabulary changes. And so as a libertarian then, what was the hardest thing to get rid of? Because I don't personally think you can carry around for very long a libertarian worldview and an Orthodox worldview. I don't think they go together very well.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Was it hard to sort of...
No, because, well, I shouldn't say no. Yes, these things are a struggle, and I still catch myself because, like you said, we grew up in this materialist world. It's so hard to look at Christianity not just up here, but from here.
Right.
And for the people only listening, I just pointed at my head first and then my heart. And libertarianism is very rationalistic, and I think because I was raised just trying to find the ultimate root of something. Actually, that's probably what led me to Orthodoxy, which is ultimately a good thing. But it's hard. It's hard to not still see things in a materialist, rationalistic view. And I try to catch myself as much as I can. And I think it's hard to get rid of the vainglory and the pride. And the pride that comes with like, I know the ultimate system, or I know this, or I built all this for myself, this wealth or this material goods around me. I did all of this. It's hard to chop that down. And I think that's what would be scary about going to live in a monastery. And I don't mean like the fancy Greek one near me. I mean like where Father Seraphim Rose was in Platina, or some of the places in Georgia. Like that's truly like, oh my gosh. It's a scary thought because we are materialistic, and libertarianism itself, the economic side of it, focuses on what can give the most people the most economic benefit and wealth, strictly in the material sense. It has nothing to do with what can build someone's spiritual life more in a more quality, meaningful way.
Well, that's what I fear about Jordan Peterson, who I'm never going to badmouth that guy. I don't really care. It's like we've been able to watch like a guy go through the semi-conversion for however many years. That's how honest this dude is. I'm cool with that. But this whole arc thing, this is the scary part, is that a lot of these cats are running very quickly ahead with some very powerful ideas about how to build the economy. And they act as if the economy is the answer to the question.
Correct.
And it's not. Even if you made it so efficient that everyone got rich. I think of like the families of the kings, because you can see in history, which I love, if you let's just say you never studied one bit of history except the history of the kings of each culture. So the history of the emperors of China, or the history of the czars of Russia. Let's just say we just did that. It's a microcosm of reality. As a new family takes over, you see that they, quote, they do well, they build. But what happens is they become obese. And I mean obese, like fat in all aspects of their being. And they become fat and overweight in terms of the way they think. They become proud and arrogant. And you see that there's a collapse. And I think as a nation, we are that obese people.
Yes, I do too.
And there's no way out but for the house of America to collapse. Not because I want it. I don't want it. There's no way to get rid of the extra poundage. Like, how would it look? Like, you think we're all going to go on a diet because we're spiritually like face forward? That's not it. That's also not what happens. Like, the fast comes and you know what happens? You obey. You don't have to fast, guys out there. You can just skip it. But the reason you fast is because you obey something higher. Where is that coming from in our society? How is that going to happen? I don't know how that happens.
You mentioned him, and I don't have to make this just about him, but Peterson and some other voices that I think helped some of us get to where we are within finding the church and whatnot. I know plenty of people. I think Father Turbo calls them the army of Peterson or something like that. But he did bring a lot of people to the church, even though he himself is not here yet. But there's a lot of people, and I want to ask you, this is going to have a few points and a few moving parts here. You've become very close with people in Muslim lands, as you've discussed. Some of these people, like Peterson and some other voices, very public voices, are extremely pro-state of Israel at this point. Having lived the life you've lived, and then of course being Orthodox, what is your viewpoint on some of the stuff we're hearing from some of those voices? And it's extremely, I'm not defending, I had Jim Jatras on here, and just because we're not pro-Israel doesn't mean we are pro-Muslim, et cetera. Because American, I don't know if it's Protestantism or what it is, it's always dialectical. And I think I've said that Orthodoxy is a dialectic smasher. So for people listening, we're not going to go on a pro one versus the other, but I just want to get John's thoughts on some of this stuff that's going on with Israel.
I like what you said, though. Orthodoxy is the destroyer of the Hegelian dialectic.
Yes.
I agree. It's really good. That's really good. So good. I guess to stay in that, I've thought about this a lot, just because my father was a priest to essentially an Antiochian parish in London, Canada. And I had gone up there a couple times to visit, and they smoke hookah afterwards. These all Palestinian guys. And I probably learned as much in those few times up there as anything. And here's what I'd say as far as it goes. Let me just decline this. So I think here's what happens in the world that I'm in understanding international aid. Israel is the expression of the Western ideal in a land where they don't really care that much about that expression. So it's it's the way the West has expressed itself in the Middle East. And you can call that, on the left, they call that colonialism, or I'm cool with that. That's not a problem. The problem is what's happening is the elites of that Arab world, of the Muslim world, also want what Israel's selling. See, and so what we don't really think about in terms of this battle is the elites of Saudi Arabia, the elites of even Iran less so, but and this comes from my experience in international aid. People don't realize when they say Sierra Leone or Saudi Arabia, there's a whole stratification of people of ideas within that place. The common people of that part of the world, they want payback for what Israel took. They want the little people of Palestine to get something back because they're their Arab brothers. But the elites, they're more in line with what Israel and the West is offering. And so I think one of the problems is you don't have a clarity on who the players are. And the news makes it much worse.
Mm-hmm.
So I would argue this about what's going on there, is that the down the middle idea is that the Christians there have the answer. No offense. The Christians there have the answer because, again, it's not the dialectic. It's in the middle. And the idea is that there has to be a laying down. There has to be a forgiveness. There has to be a bending. I always think the Palestinians should all get together, walk to the wall, to back to northern Gaza, and they should just walk into Israel, and they're going to get shot. And that's what has to happen. Or the Israelis have to say, forgive us. That answer is the Christian answer, but good luck with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen. So I don't really take sides. Historically, though, I think the people of Palestine have a pretty good argument. Historically, materialistically, in terms of modern history, they have a pretty good argument, and I don't think it ends well for Israel. It's not going to end well if they just try to bomb everybody, and it's not going to work.
Right. Well, we've seen, I think, foreign policy driven by Zionism doesn't always turn out well. It certainly doesn't for us.
Don't you think Zionism is just an extension? The Zionists were atheists, many of them. So to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. On the other hand, it's too late. Israelis live there, man. They live and they love there. They hope there. They have joy there. You can't just go in and take people. It's a mess.
It is
a mess.
Do you I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you have sort of an old world, at least lens that you're able to see things through. You've been in these places, and you are Orthodox, which I think also helps. Is there a American Christian misconception of the state of Israel, in your opinion?
Yeah, fundamentally.
How
fundamentally it's theology, right?
Yeah.
That you probably talked about it on your show. Forgive me if I missed it, but the Protestant theology, and that's not all Protestants, so we have to watch out for that.
Right.
That's really important.
Yes.
It's a certain type of Protestant theology. It's a certain type of teaching about what Israel is. That teaching is impossible to square with Orthodox Christianity. It absolutely makes no sense. But that is they are huge players in all the conversations that happen at the highest levels. And what people don't realize, I think, is that those conversations being had at the highest levels, they matter. And they matter because they're backed by big dollars.
Yes.
And so what seems like solvable, that theology is so bad that it actually adds to the problem. And I think people who don't realize that the New Jerusalem, everybody's a potential Jew now, because that's the theology, right? Am I going to get in trouble for that?
No, I hope not.
I hope not. But if Christ is Christ, then everybody's a Jew, or could be. If that's not the theology of a Christian, yeah, you have a huge problem. Also, think about, as an American, that makes Israel your home. As an American Christian, that makes Israel your home. That's nuts. That's not good theology. It's bad teaching. I think we call it heresy.
We do. Yes.
Am I in trouble? Are you okay? Do we have to turn this off?
No, man, I'm great. Yeah. I've had your brother on. We're good.
You're fine. You're fine.
We're good.
This is easy peasy.
Yes. I don't know where I want to go with this. I have a few thoughts. I would say, I have never asked anyone this. What's some of the biggest, I don't like to say what's the biggest difference. I like to say, kind of leave it open. What are some big differences between an old world view and our American New World view?
Awesome. Hey, do you want to do something fun?
Yeah.
You want to take a quiz?
Uh-oh. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Is this the quiz that you gave at Montanica?
This is
Are those 10 talking points, or is this not that?
No, different quiz.
Okay. Because I was going to say, I already know the answers. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I'm just gonna go to the website. Hold on. It's gonna take 1 second.
All right.
And then I'm going to ask you a series of questions.
Okay.
It's actually going to answer the question.
All right.
I'm excited for this.
I'm nervous.
Yeah. And this test will actually tell you how New World you are. You ready, Buck?
Yeah, I'm ready.
It's fun. Let's do it. Okay. First question. When you die, now remember, we're trying to answer how old world is Buck. When you die, you won't really die all the way. It's more like you'll be asleep waiting for the next world of some sort. So that's the question. 3 is strongly agree.
Yeah,
right?
I would.
2 is
okay.
2 is agree. 1 is I disagree. 0 is I strongly disagree.
Okay.
0 strongly disagree. 3 strongly agree.
We say in Orthodoxy, he reposed in the Lord. He fell asleep in the Lord. So if I'm understanding the question right, I would say 3.
3, you got it.
Okay.
All right, remember that number.
Okay.
We're gonna answer the question. Number 2, the best way for you, Buck, to know yourself is to ask someone else about yourself. 3 strongly agree, 0 strongly disagree.
3.
3, got it. Here's the third question. There's only 5.
Okay.
If anybody's listening, you're like, please make this end. We're not going to make it end.
This is fun.
Very soon.
Yes.
3, when I carry a picture of someone I love, say in my purse or my wallet, or you, Buck, you're actually carrying that person around with you, sort of somehow, like they're actually close to you because that picture is with you. 3, strongly agree, 0, strongly disagree.
3.
Oh, another 3. Look at this. 4, respect isn't earned. Respect is owed by you, Buck, to others.
That's a tough one. I know what I should say, but I'm going to be realistic.
Yeah, be realistic, because I got to rewrite this test anyway. So
2.
2, got it. Agree. Last question. You hope and I don't know your family situation, but I'll read both options.
Okay.
You hope and expect to take in your parents and have them live with you when they get old and infirmed, or you firmly expect to live near your kids, even preferably in their house when you get old and infirm. It depends what kind of family situation you have.
3. I like that idea. Agree. Yeah.
All right. Add up your score.
Mom, if you're listening, you're not really going to come live with me. I'm joking. I'm kidding. Yeah. 3. Let's add it up. So we got 15 plus 18. I got a 20.
No, you couldn't have got a 20.
Really? 15?
Wait, 5 questions.
Uh-huh.
If you got a 20, you are the oldest world person that ever lived, times 5. So question 1 was 3.
Oh, shoot. I'm an idiot. So now my audience knows I'm an idiot with math. So maybe that's super
makes you
old
older.
World. Yeah,
even
right.
More old world.
Right. I'm 12, 14.
14. So
yes.
Here's what you're not. You're not a 0, which would make you would win the Francis Bacon Award.
Oh, gosh. Thank goodness.
Which old world thinking has the same appeal to you as placing leeches on an open sore.
Right.
You're not the high nooner. That would be 1 to 3. That means you love the high noon clarity of the enlightenment. That's not you. You're not a 4 to 6, which is the shining city dweller on the hill. That means you love Reddit. You might do scientific calculations in order to find out how to find a wife. That's not you. You're not the suburbanite, and you are the villager. Would you like to hear scientifically what you are, Buck? I'm going to give it to you. Are you
Let's
ready?
hear it. Yeah.
You have scored a 14. That makes you a high villager. There's a good chance you hate malls. Places like Ethiopia, Algeria, the Congo roll out the red carpet for you. Your Spotify collection includes chants from some hard to pronounce province.
That is
And
true.
you wish there was more hierarchy in the world, even if you don't really like it that much.
That is true. Cool.
You have answered in a way that I think on each of these questions, we designed this, guys. We designed it like in 5 minutes. But here's the thing. It works.
Mm-hmm.
So the things we're pointing at in each one of these, afterlife, right? Second question is about how do you know yourself? Well, the community will teach you, not you. If you sit there and go, I'm the kind of person that, you want to make sure you want to know, where'd you get that from? If it's from your own head, you probably don't know yourself.
Right.
The third one, to carry a picture around, is something like, is there imagery and symbolism in the world, or is it just all science? So that question. And then respect isn't earned. Usually Americans struggle with this one because you just owe respect to your elders. It doesn't matter if they hit you in the face 3 times. They're your elders. That's old world. And then the last one is legacy. What will you do with people older than you, and how will you treat them?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is something like the beginning of the conversation, which is, what's old world? This stuff will point you in which direction. And I've had many friends. One of my friends was a 2.
Wow.
Dear friend of mine in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you talk to him, you would think him very modern and progressive.
Yes.
So
okay.
That's my answer.
I wonder if there's a scale from to your friend to 20 or whatever it could have been, where you could also track orthodoxy down to atheist, and what would be in between.
So here's the thing. I've had Orthodox people score low.
Okay. So there is no, okay.
But not low.
Okay.
They usually won't go, you scored 14, which is really high, by the way. Welcome to the classification of old world, known only by one other person I've ever given this to, my sister.
Oh.
She was 14 too.
Wow.
I never had a 15. But it's like the Orthodox floor is like 4. You won't see people go under that are trying to practice their faith. But my buddy Seth, he's probably the most atheistic guy I know, he scored a 9. He was in the middle.
Okay.
So, who knows how this works. Right. I hope that answers your question.
It
after
does.
all that time of
that was a fun
around.
way to answer it. I like it. And I want people, if you're listening to this, take the quiz and leave your score in the comments of the YouTube page. That'll be fun.
That'd be fun.
Yes, I want to see
you
that.
can put the link into our website where we actually have it. You can go to the website and
I'm
read
going
it
to
and take it.
I'm going to link it in the show notes. What is it, by the way, just in case people are driving around or whatever?
It's called the light-o-meter. How light person are you? So that's our term in our podcast for someone who is a child of the enlightenment.
Right. Cool. Let's talk about the restaurant.
Sure.
Because I don't know if this is a good thing, a bad thing. People are going to judge. I love really good food and really good drink. And just looking at the web page for the restaurant, it appears that you have both. And I appreciate, I've heard you talk many times about kind of traditions and people sitting at tables, where they're placed at tables, certain toasts. So let's get into some of that.
Sure. Our nonprofit First Things, through a really nice donation from one of our board members, opened a restaurant on the skinny, though. I want everyone to know that because we need your business. And it's a Georgian restaurant. And so we've managed to get a Georgian wine distributor. And so all of our wine is Georgian there. From time to time, we bring in Georgian cha-cha. So I'll just tell you about those two things. Georgian wines are unique. It's really interesting. The day that our Art of the Tamada event, by the way, for all of you who came, much love to you. We did a fundraiser that it really was really a vacation where people came for 4 days, and we just got finished. On that same day, on that Sunday, we finished 60 Minutes aired a really long segment on Georgia.
Yes, I saw that just the other night.
Yeah, and it was a good segment. I give them kudos. There was a little moment there. You could tell there was like a Russian jab.
I caught it.
You caught it, right?
The exact same thing. Yep.
Yeah, that was Soviet people. The Russians leave the Georgian churches.
Right, but
the
they
Soviets,
left that part out, of course.
Yeah. Now there is a rivalry. There is a type of Georgian Orthodoxy, Russian Orthodoxy. That thing's real, but generally they weren't fighting each other. The governments may have been, but not the churches. That was not real. But anyway, so Georgian wines are unique. They're made in these clay qvevris, and the qvevri is clay, and the wine is interacting with the clay in a certain way. And the way they peel and ferment their grapes, they leave a lot of the roughage in and create this amber wine that's gorgeous. So we have this amber wine there, these variations on amber wines. We have really nice dry reds called rocatzelis and very nice whites. And essentially, we've managed to make a little name for having these Georgian wines. Cha-Cha is a Georgian moonshine that we try to bring into the restaurant every now and then. Though the distributors, it's really a gift that when we bring this in, we don't really sell it. We share it with folks. And then all of our menu is Georgian, but with I wouldn't say a deep amount of fusion, but it's Americanized because we're Americans. So we did not open this with a Georgian chef. And so we opened it with an American chef who then left, and we brought in a Ukrainian. A Georgian friend of ours helped us for a long time. And now I think our food is delicious. So what is it? You're going to see this kinkali, which is a really nice dumpling that is inside the dumpling is a soup. So you have to eat it a certain way where you bite it and slurp it. It's delicious. Kinkali, I highly recommend that. We have a thing called khachapuri, which is the traditional bread in Georgia that's cheese with egg. It's called ajaruli khachapuri. And then you have all these other khachapuris. We serve an Emirati khachapuri, Emiruli. And so what I'm trying to say is breads, cheeses, melted. You get a lot of really fresh beets and walnuts. Walnuts are a main ingredient in Georgian food. And so we're, a working restaurant trying to make money. And so far, so good. Although it's hit and miss, But we got some great pub. We had great reviews. The New York Times came and did an article on us for Greenville. It was nuts.
Nice.
And I highly, highly, highly recommend people come. And when you come and we make money, it serves our nonprofit. There is no, the dross of that work is, by law, goes into First Things Foundation. So it's a nonprofit restaurant.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if you like food and you like cheese and you like a unique flavor, ajika is the spice that they use a lot. Come on in. It's awesome. Greenville, South Carolina. The other thing is I go all over and do capis. Capi is the term for table in Georgia. Mm-hmm. Kind of really means party. And it's ground in these principled toasts that I think the best way to describe it is it's an attentive night filled with toasts to the highest things.
That is so cool.
And then each person at the table, is invited to toast back on the theme. It's a type of poetry contest. But don't hear contest as like winners and losers. It's more like, I offer you this toast to the nature of women or to the nature of love. And then someone at the table says, please, may I have a toast to this? And then you say, to my mother. I offer the big idea to women, to hope, to joy, to men, to love. I say it poetically, and then you offer it back at the particular. So then you say, you speak on love, and no one has ever loved me as much as my wife. Mm-hmm. My wife.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so it goes like back and forth. And when you see it, it's very liturgical. Uh-huh. It's ground into, it's born out of the Georgian liturgical cycle and the idea of a priest and the amen. The tamada is a type of priest, and then the toast back is a type of amen. And so you see the litanies in the conversation at the table. It's awesome. It's just awesome. And I'm so proud of it.
Very cool.
We brought it here. Yeah.
In closing, I'll give you the floor for anything you'd like to say, plus plugs for any of your work.
Oh, you're kind. One is, I'd just like to say to you, man, so you're doing a podcast that takes the passions of so many of us and rightly directs it to really, really nice conversations, and also always with a reminder of what we're trying to do in life. Because I think so many things in the internet take the passions and wind them and enervate them, and they can become not good for us if not properly directed. And I always feel you have a calm peace for the proper direction, and it's a joy. It's nice. A joy. So I mean that. And I think all of us in this subculture on the internet are responsible for doing that. We should be responsible to people we always should end with love. Truth is important and essential, but we should end with love. So I honor that, man, for you. The other thing I'd like to say is, guys, support our work. We're not taking a single state income, like a state grant, no national grants, no nothing. It's just local people. So our guys go and work for peanuts, like literally like they don't get paid. But they build beautiful things, and we've done it so far on lots of small donations. So we're trying to get to 50 right now, Buck. 50 people between about 3 weeks ago and December 31st. And those 50 people are hopefully, what we're shooting for is a recurring donor. So someone who gives $5 a month. 50 would be better. And that person is invited to hang out with us once a month. We do calls and we learn more about first things, but we talk philosophy. I got a Substack, and I like philosophy and history. So, but we get into it, and those donors are the meat and potatoes of our work. And so if you get on there, I know everybody's asking for money. I get it. I'm the worst at being good at pitching this stuff, but I'm telling you, this is a really authentic way to serve people around the world, including in the United States. Our project in the United States, Buck, is the restaurant. People are like, well, what are you doing in the United States? You should watch people come in and sit together at one of these dinners. We sing to the Theotokos. These people are all secular.
Oh.
Like the Georgian tradition is always the first toast to God and to the Theotokos, the fifth toast to the dead. We sing Memory Eternal. The last toast is always to the hands of the people who made it. There's always a toast to new life and resurrection. And so we're not making people participate in that, but as a cultural event, our table is filled with people not Orthodox, and then we sit 20 at a table and go through the traditions. So in the United States, one of our goals is to create relationship where so many of us don't have them. And it's really beautiful to watch. And so when you support us, some of that is for our project here too. And restaurants aren't easy to run. So I would love all y'all to become recurring donors, but also God is good. Everything will be fine, just as it should be.
Yes.
Just
well
as it should be.
Well put. I'm going to link to all of that stuff, of course, in the show notes page. And man, John, this has been awesome. Thank you.
Dude, thanks for letting me prattle on. But also, it's good talking to you. You peaceful soul, man. It's good for me today now. Now I can go about my business.
Wow.
And I've had something good in my life. Yeah.
Dang, that's kind. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. God bless.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with John Heers. What a guy. I told you he was cool. I told you he seems just like a genuinely wonderful human being. He's the kind of guy that makes me feel like I've just not done enough yet. I've just not done enough for enough people. What a guy. Let me tell you guys something. The Patreon supporters out there that are used to attending our monthly Zoom sessions, I have missed the month of November, and I'm going to try my absolute hardest to make it up and have 2 in December. Here's the deal. I mentioned this last week. The person who I have invited to be our special guest is awaiting permission from his bishop to do this. Certain jurisdictions, the clergy have to get permission from the bishop now to do anything podcast related. And even though our Zoom is private, he still needs permission. So we're awaiting that. And I apologize. It's the holidays. Maybe things just run slower all around, but we will get to it. I will try my best to do 2 in December. How about that, guys? If you're listening and you're thinking, what's he talking about? Well, you can go to patreon.com/counterflow and become a member for $5 a month or more. You can do as much as you like. You can do $5,000 a month if that's what you like. But the minimum is $5 a month. You get into our club, our exclusive club, where every month we have a Zoom call all together. It's not recorded. It's not posted. It's private. We have a special guest. We have you. We have me. The deep state is watching us. What more can you ask for? It's a good time, and it really means a lot to me. The people that do that or that are in this exclusive club, not only are they just wonderful human beings, they're really smart, really kind, and it means a lot because this, quite honestly, this show costs money to produce. I've got the best producers in the world, and they aren't free. Let's put it that way. So join patreon.com/counterflow, and we'll get into it every month. And let's see, at Buck Rebel, BuckRebel on Twitter. And that's about all I got until next week. I'm so excited. Next week is a topic I've maybe touched on once, but boy, we get deep into it next week. You will see. I've never had this guest on. He designs and he builds. That's your hint. See you next week. God bless.
You get split in half, like on the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.